All right, we are live. Well, thank you. Thank you, members of stewardship committees from the Diocese of Newark, for joining this training. We are co-hosting this. TENS, the Episcopal Network for Stewardship, is delighted to be in partnership with the Diocese of Newark. And tonight's session, the first of four, is on recruiting and training a stewardship team. Our next session, as Cynthia mentioned, next week is on breaking through the pledge plateau. So if you like what you've seen here and you like this model, join us next Thursday and we'll have more fun together. I want to review a couple of our learning objectives for this evening. We're going to talk a little bit about what a stewardship committee does. This might be obvious for those of you who have served on your stewardship committee for many years. But there are some things that the stewardship committee should do and some things that maybe you can let the vestry or the finance team or other committees handle from time to time. So having some scope for our work is really helpful. We're going to talk a little bit about the different jobs that committee members have, ways that you can focus. Not everybody should be doing everything that the stewardship plan needs. Some people are specialized in creating great materials or planning a good party or telling their story. So find your niche and help people identify what it is so that we can divide the work up and it makes things go more smoothly. A lot of what makes a good group function, and this is stewardship, this is your vestry, this is any small group within a congregation, is if you do some formation together. If you coalesce or bond as a team, then you are each other's support network. The work of asking for money in church is hard work, and you should know, you should embrace that, but also feel supported. And your crew, your team, are your people who you can talk with about the challenges and also bounce great ideas off of and learn from. So we're going to talk about a few ways to help you form yourselves into a group. And also then turn some of that back into the congregation. Not everybody in the congregation is born to make the most generous gift that they've ever made. We need to form them too in their generosity and their response to gratitude. So we're going to talk about some formation exercises that you might be able to lead in your congregation or help your rector lead in a rector's forum or put articles in the newsletter, all kinds of things that we can do together. Finally, we're going to talk about a little bit of goal setting and what that should be and what that can look like. We'll probably cover some other things too. So I want to start off by saying that the thing that the stewardship team does every year is they say, we got to raise money. Let's call together the stewardship team. And yeah, okay, it's our job to raise money, but money's going to be raised because of how we do our work. It's not our purpose. It's the end product or the result of our action. What I mean by that is that what we do is elevate the work of gratitude and generosity in our congregation. We help all of the ministry areas get identified and flourish and talk about what they do well. And in doing that, we'll learn to raise good money and time and talent as well. So all of those things, people will be energized to be a part of it. If we start off by saying our job is to raise money, it feels pretty difficult. It feels onerous. And so our job is really to raise our ministry profile and get people excited about it. The money will come as a result of that. Our relationship between gratitude and generosity is what makes for our great stewardship campaigns. So a couple of things that a stewardship committee does and has responsibility for. If you have a theme, whether you use the TENS theme that we have for you, which this year is called Rooted in Abundance, or if you develop your own theme, it's your job to communicate that to the congregation. Why are we doing this? What does it mean? Why this particular string of words? Why did we put this together this year? So if that can be sometimes, sorry, there's a fire truck going right by my window. Sometimes that can be about an anniversary or a milestone. Maybe you're celebrating something in your community, or maybe you have a theological concept you've been working on. Whatever your theme, know it and have everyone on the committee be able to talk about it and know why you've picked it. Those words matter because a theme, everything hangs off of it. One of the things that a stewardship committee does is create great case materials. And so that brochure, your letters, if you do a narrative budget, if you do other kinds of things that go into, or if you do videos or social media posts, creating the design and the messaging around that is one of the roles for the stewardship committee. You're also there to help all the functions of our church leadership come into alignment. So our preaching, our teaching, the way we form our budget, the vestry, they should all know what this year's theme is and be able to bring it through the learning and the teaching and the growing that we're doing as a congregation. When that happens, we just keep re-emphasizing what our theme and what our work is all about. So part of your work is to align with those different committees and say, add some of this language to what you're producing. It could be as simple as an email signature or a word that gets said at the offertory, or some way that liturgically and materially and in our communication, we keep talking about the theme. Obviously, your role on the stewardship committee is to plan a great campaign and to roll it out and to create the process and to then follow up with those gifts that need following up. We know that in December or whenever your campaign ends, there's always that cleanup phase of families that haven't yet turned in their materials, or people that you're just not sure of. Did they connect? Did we got some paperwork? It was confusing. So all that kind of cleanup work, it happens as well. Picking your structure, we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but picking a theme, or sorry, picking the structure of your campaign. So are you going to do phone calls? Are you going to do visits? Are you going to do small groups? Are you going to do, how are you going to do your campaign? And that structure also, early on, when you pick that, it helps you organize your work as a stewardship committee. We're going to go into some details about all these things. Finally, your role often is to plan some kind of event. It could be an actual event with food and party favors, moving tables and chairs, as we do in church so often. It could also be those other things. Maybe it's just a great announcement that happens, some high energy in the service, some way that either kicks off or celebrates our ingathering, or both. It's important to have those visible pieces of the beginning and ending of our campaign as well. So it just doesn't feel like flat, like we're embarrassed about raising money. Now this is a moment of high energy in our congregation. When you're recruiting members for your team, be really intentional about it. Not everybody is suited to serve on a stewardship committee, although most people can. The kind of person who says right off, I hate talking about money, or it's really awkward for me, probably is not a person that you should ask to serve on your stewardship committee. Although sometimes we ask people who really don't want to be on it. Oh, just suck it up. You can do it for the team. No, don't push people into stewardship, because it's a serious ministry. Find some ways to have those personal conversations with the people you're inviting. So maybe it's either the clergy, or maybe it's the campaign chair. You're having so why, Davey, am I asking you to serve on the stewardship committee? What gifts do you have that I've noticed that would be really useful to us? It's not a general appeal. When we do that, I know it happens in many congregations. If you'd like to be on the stewardship committee, please come see me after the service. And no one comes to see you after the service, because that's a very generic way to ask for people. Rather, identify folks who will be really good. And we're going to talk in a minute about what to look for in a good stewardship committee member. And then recruit them one-on-one. The more seriously you treat the recruitment process, the more you'll communicate the importance of this committee and the importance of the ask that you're making of this group. I always get asked, how big should our stewardship committee be? We have a really small congregation. Everybody's already doing something. How many people do we need to find for this? Can they serve on other committees? And the answer is contextual, right? So if you are a congregation and you have 10 volunteers that do everything, they're probably going to be on your stewardship committee too, if you can't find other people. It's great to have some balance. If you can find balance, if you can find some new people who aren't already doing everything else in your church, who can dedicate themselves to this ministry for a period of time, it's most helpful. But I understand the way our congregations work, that sometimes that's not possible. Do your best. Your committee should be in a manageable size as to the kind of model that you've picked and the number of households you need to reach. So if you are doing that kind of every member canvas where every person or every household gets a visit or a phone call, then a reasonable person with a life and a family and some time to sleep and eat can really only manage maybe 10 or 15 households over a 4 to 6 week period, right? Any more than that, and it's an impossible task. You're going to be doing a lot of scheduling and a lot of phone calls, and you have a limited amount of time. So think about your process, think about your structure, and then the number of people that you need to do it. If you're doing small groups or if you're doing house meetings, you need fewer people to do the asking and more people to do the coordinating. And that's an easier task than trying to have one-on-one conversations. So all the methods are good. There are strengths and weaknesses to every model of stewardship, but whatever you pick for yours, have the right number of people. If you short yourself in committee members and have a really burdensome process, you're going to burn out your team. And then next year, I'm not going to want to do stewardship again. You're going to be working all over again to develop a new team. So think about that one. What's your structure? How many people was it really going to take? So some helpful information from my good friend, the recently retired Bishop of Nevada, who tells me every year that we should have that stewardship committee in place by Easter. And every year I miss that goal. Mine isn't in place yet, I will tell you that. But we're working on it, like you all are working on it. So what are some things that he has to say about this? An effective team will raise more money to fund the church's mission. That's because it's been brought together. It has a purpose. It's thinking its process through. It's going to be more effective. The conversation is going to be clearer. The messaging is going to be better. The process isn't going to feel rushed. The more time you have to iron out the kinks and take care of the details, the better your stewardship campaign will be, so it won't feel like that September rush. I just want to point out that I know many of us won't really get serious about this in congregations until the fall comes around, and I understand that it's part of the work. But the earlier we can do it, and I am encouraging myself and all of you to get this done early so that you can spend some time working through the details. A good committee will engender support and appreciation for all the parish ministries. This is that role of cheerleader or ambassador, knowing what the children's program does and how many families it serves and how it accomplishes its work. And when somebody says, well, what does it need from me? It needs your time, it needs your ideas, and this is how much money the children's program takes to run. We should be able to have answers, and it serves 50 kids over the year, or it serves 12 families, or whatever your numbers are. So being able to have a real ambassadorship for your programs. Talk about your food pantry ministry, talk about your after school tutoring program, talk about your knitting group and your seniors group and your reading, your book club, all those different ministries that you have. You're there to cheer them on and to raise everybody's awareness. Sometimes there are these groups that have been meeting for a long time and nobody knows about them anymore. Maybe there's a book club that's been meeting every third Tuesday for the last 20 years and nobody knows that they're still actually meeting and doing this work. Maybe some new people would like to participate in it. When we raise awareness, people get more involved. Your team, your cohort, it's your crew. It's your crew to help you if you're doing face-to-face or one-on-one phone calls, and that process can be hard. This is your group that you can talk with about how to approach certain members of the congregation or strategies that work. This is also a great chance to form some really deep community within your congregation. People who work on an intense and beautiful program like Stewardship often find themselves good friends in other areas of the church. You create a real strengthening bond here when you do this work together and you form yourselves. Finally, your stewardship committee, they're models of generosity and gratitude for everyone. You might talk about it, you might broadcast that, you might just show it in your cheerful disposition. But optimism is a really important thing in a stewardship committee member. A stewardship committee member that's like, oh, we're never going to make the budget. It's really hard work. Oh my goodness. Whether you say it with that attitude or not, but if you feel that way, that comes across, right? Our ministry needs to be supported optimistically because it's built on hope, like our churches. So really enter into that. You carry that spirituality of gratitude and generosity with you when you're a member of the stewardship committee, and that's what you communicate to others. Here are some people that you should look for that would make really good members of your stewardship committee. People who know people. So that person in your church who's like the hub of everything, who's the nexus at coffee hour, they have a cluster around them. They're always, people really like them. They make great conversation. They probably make good chocolate chip cookies too. That person in your congregation that everybody just knows and loves. So people who are really well loved and have influence. There's always that person in your congregation that they hold a lot of relationships. And if they're supportive of something, it gets done in our church. We all can identify that person, we know it. And also if they don't like it, we know what happens too, right? So invite that person to be an ambassador to work with you. If you can diversify your team to match your congregation in all the ways that your congregation is diverse, that's even better. Because when we are there representing the stewardship campaign and asking people to join in making a gift, we want to show that we're representative. This includes all of the predictable things that we would want to include in diversity, and also in the ways that people participate in our church. So if you have multiple services, make sure it's not just all of your 11 o'clockers serving on the stewardship committee. You need some 8 o'clockers too. Make sure that there are some choir members and some gardening club folks, some really have a diversity. If you've got a weekday group that meets for potluck and book reading or Bible study, and it's been really a thriving ministry, invite someone from that group too, because they hold a piece of the ministry of the church that's not the Sunday group. My own congregation has a Wednesday night potluck that gets people who don't come on Sundays. They just love to come on Wednesdays, eat dinner with everyone, talk about the Bible, and then leave. So that's their church. If that's church for them and they're doing it and they're faithful and they're pledging members, that's beautiful. That's work of the church. So involve people in those other services and those other ways. Look for the people who really love the congregation, who when you talk to them and they're like, I love this place. I feel good about this place. I found this place and it helped me. I've raised my kids here. I'm raising my grandkids here. I just love what I love what everybody wears, and I love how everybody gathers, and they just couldn't say enough things about the church. Well, invite them to serve on your stewardship committee, because that love and that affection and that joy they have for your congregation is something that you want when you're talking about why we give, how we join, how people are asked to share their wealth, works, and wisdom with the church. Those people are great to serve on a stewardship committee, and they will teach you things about joy and abundance. And that's a beautiful thing. So not everybody is born to raise money, and so not everybody is comfortable with it. So find people who at least can talk about money in church and feel all right with that. So they have the heart for stewardship. Maybe they even have a little passion for it. Maybe they understand that giving is its own joy, that it has its own faith and its own meditative process to it. The discernment that we undergo when we think about how we're going to share our gifts with our community is a really important one. And so somebody who has that deep heart for giving is a good person to invite onto your stewardship committee. They will be really good because they can be bold about why they support the church and why they give of themselves to the church. That authenticity, that story of personal testimony is so important in a stewardship campaign. When people say, I give to this place because of all these reasons, or because it really deeply matters to me in my heart, they communicate that love and that desire to other folks. Your stewardship campaign is about the whole life of generosity that we as Christians embrace. We are so grateful for everything that has been given to us in creation, and the good news of the gospel, that we just go out and we follow that great commission. We share the good news and spread it to everyone. We have that joy. Your heart-centered leaders know that, and they'll help you with it too. Invite one of them to serve on your committee. Here are a few other people to look for. So someone who's good at running a meeting. So that person who starts on time and ends on time, people know it's not going to be like, we signed up for an hour, but we're still here 3 hours later, wrapping up. No, somebody who can get stuff done. This is a really good skill for someone to serve on a committee, because they'll keep you to it. You can get really bogged down in stewardship committee work, and you can start to focus in on too many details, and that can really drag down the energy. So somebody who can keep things moving. People with credibility. So we know in our congregation, there's probably one person that people go to for the best advice. They've been around a long time. Maybe they've had a career in something that's very respectable. People really, when they say something, people believe it, and they don't say something unless they believe it. So those people in your congregation, maybe one of them should serve on your stewardship committee, because people will believe them and follow them. And we want people who are followed to be on the stewardship committee, because ultimately what they're following is the path of giving and getting deeper into the congregation. Choose people with time. One of my favorite sayings, and I believe it, is that if you want something done, ask a busy person to do it, because they know how to manage time well. And this is true, but there are people who are just too busy to serve on your stewardship committee. This is because your stewardship committee functions usually in a very functions all year to plan it and get things in gear, but that portion of the campaign is a time limited moment. And so if somebody says, I really want to serve on the stewardship committee, but I'm going to be in Europe all of October, maybe not this year on the stewardship committee, because they just don't have the time to give to it. Or if they're like, I've got kids in soccer and violin and swimming in September, I probably can't do this, then give them a break. There are other ministries for them. This isn't one of them. So, do it, people who have the time. Try not to include too many members of your vestry or who are in other parts of your money-focused ministries on the stewardship team. You can have a liaison to the vestry, maybe a liaison into the finance committee, but you shouldn't have lots of members of both of those in the stewardship committee, because the work of governing the church and leading the church is different from the work of raising the money for the budget and for our outreach and for our mission and ministry. So try and keep some separation. It's also a little more, those people are also very busy. They have other important things to do in the church. So let them do what they need to do. Finally, and this is the most important, only ask people to serve on the stewardship committee who give their own gift. It is absolutely essential that the leadership of the congregation support the campaign. I like to solicit the campaign team, the vestry, the clergy gifts before the campaign launches, so that on the day we launch, we can say we have 100% participation from our leadership, and we've already raised 12% of the goal, or we're already well on our way, or whatever you want to say. It is so important to do that, because then the ask for giving is not give, but join me. And when you can say join me, you're asking people to follow you. You're asking people to do something you've already been willing to do. And if we're following stewardship well, we're discerning that gift. We're praying about that gift. We've had a conversation with our spouse and our family about what this gift means and how much of our disposable income it's taking. We've done some work about this, and that's beautiful work. And if you can do all of that, then you're asking people to join you in that. That's hard work, right? It's hard work to figure out what your gift should be. We don't just look at a piece of paper and say, oh, I'll do this and commit to that, because our money is finite. Well, mine is, at least. Our money is finite. It's not forever. So when I give it, it matters to me, and it matters where it's going. So ask people who support the campaign. I get asked often at this point, you might be thinking it, well, what if they really give a lot of their time, but they just don't have a lot of money to give? And I love those people. They're not on your stewardship committee. The stewardship committee really ultimately is people who give time, talent, and treasure. And if someone's unwilling to give even $1 a week or whatever, $1 a month to support the campaign, then there's something missing. And they're not deficient people. They're not spiritually broken or anything like that. I'm not suggesting anything like that, but I'm saying that it becomes impossible to say, join me in making a gift if people aren't making a gift. So do that. Ask people who are supporting the campaign. So if you do all that and you have a really great campaign ahead of you, you're gonna, before I move on, you're gonna have a really well-run campaign full of people who are really committed. One of the things I will send to you, I forgot to include a slide on it, but one of the things I will send to you is a link to TEN's document on stewardship committee job descriptions. And it's like a member at large. It's maybe one for the campaign chair, for the recording secretary, for the party planner or the event planner. And they're different roles, right? We don't all need to do the same thing. We follow our heart and our passion for the things that we do really well. So I will share with you some stewardship committee job descriptions so that you can just see. I always like when I'm a volunteer, if somebody says, these are the things you're responsible for, and these are the things you don't have to do, because like any job, you want to do it well, right? So so we have some at 10s for you to use and then adapt to your own parish context. All right, so let's talk a little bit. So now we've formed the team. And you're meeting and you're talking and you're getting to know each other, and maybe you've done a book study, and we're going to talk about some formation exercises in a bit. But you're starting to prepare for the campaign itself. And you want to prepare for some of the challenges that will come up in your stewardship. And there are challenges, every year is different. We remember the stewardship campaigns of 2020 and 2021 fondly, and they're happily in our rear view. And now we're moving past it. We're in a new place, but there's new uncertainty and new problems that we need to think about. So every year has challenges and every year has great things going into it. So this year, when you find that there might be some hesitance on people to make a pledge because they don't know what's going on with their job, they're in an industry that's a little weird right now, or that there are problems with, or maybe they have been impacted already by tech layoffs or other layoffs that are happening. Maybe we will have a recession, maybe we won't have a recession. Some companies are already moving in that direction. So what to do when there's economic fallout in your community? The first and most important thing, I think, is to remind everyone when they're making their gift that there's no shame in pledging less this year than you did last year. If that's what you need to do after your discernment, there's no shame. Don't make a gift that you can't complete. There's no shame whatsoever. We want you to make a gift that's good. A gift that's good for you, that's good for God, that's good for your household. Don't worry about it, and don't feel shame or guilt. This might not need to be said, but I think often we approach our giving with some kind of sense of people are paying attention, or I feel guilty that I can't give more. We shouldn't feel guilty about our gifts. We should feel excited and honored and filled with joy that we're able to make a gift at all. So when we can do that, there's no shame. Remember, not everybody is impacted by an economic event in the same way. Some families derive their income from other places or other ways. And so if there's struggle in your community, not every family might be struggling in the same way. So some members might surprise you. Don't go into a challenging stewardship year thinking everybody's going to give less, because some might surprise you. Many might surprise you and be able to give more. Also, when there's suffering around us, we are more aware of suffering and we're more generous. So some people dig deeper when they see what's going on around them and try to give more. So not everybody reacts to struggle the same way. This is very important, this next point, and it'll come up, I think, again and again in stewardship. Every conversation about money and pledging is pastoral. This is because your money, our money, isn't just a tool of wealth, isn't just something we use to buy and sell and save. We put a lot of stuff on it. We put our hopes and our fears and our joys, our feelings of success and failure, really deep emotional things are tied to our money, whether they should or shouldn't be. It's part of our psychology. So sometimes when you're talking with people about making a gift or joining you in making a gift, or you're out there talking about the campaign and the needs of the church, remember that people are hearing that through their lens of money. And so some folks might have a very acute need. And you might find yourself in a conversation that's suddenly very personal. And those are beautiful. Those are beautiful things to have. But know what your own boundaries are, know where you're at with that, know what information you shouldn't have or share. And be aware that some people might share a lot about what's going on in their lives. Which goes to the next point. So have some reciprocity with your clergy or your pastoral care team when you're in stewardship, because you'll find out things. Sometimes we make decisions about our money before we tell the rest of the congregation what's going on with us. Maybe we have a sick relative, or maybe we're about to lose our job, or maybe retirement is on the horizon, but we haven't shared that news yet. But as we're thinking about next year's gift, it's present in our mind. So if you find something like that out, it's good to tell the clergy. You know, you might want to give Davey a call. There's something going on in his household. Share whatever information is not confidential about that, and invite that conversation to happen at a deeper pastoral level with the clergy. The same is true of your list. When you have that list of names, I'm going to reach out to these 10 people. I think it's great to have a conversation with your priest or with the folks in your church that do pastoral care and say, is there anyone on this list I shouldn't contact? Anything you know, you don't have to tell me any details I shouldn't know, don't want to know. But if there's anything, any reason why they shouldn't be on the list, or whether we should be more gentle this year, let me know. And that way you can have appropriate conversations with people. Notice I'm not saying we should skip them altogether. Everyone should always be invited to join in the campaign. When we make the decision for them not to approach them, that's really insulting, right? They might really want to give and participate in the campaign. We might just need a gentle approach. So know how to approach people and have that reciprocity in pastoral care. A couple more things to remember when it comes to challenges. Remember, we've been in bad times before. We will be there again, and we get through them. Whatever we're going through now is hopefully temporary. This too shall pass, and we are people of hope. When our communities are suffering, the people rely on the church more. If we have a food pantry, the line is longer. If we're collecting clothes, we need more of them. If we're collecting school supplies for inner city kids or whatever we're doing, that work is more acute when the economy is rough. And so our congregations are asked to step up. And so that's a reason why our stewardship campaigns need to be really strong when we're doing, when we're having challenges in our economy and in our culture and our community. If your budget is looking really rough this year, and you know your finance team maybe has said we might have to make some cuts. We're looking at, you know, we can't do another year of deficit spending. Things have come into a place. We really need to right size some things. And you're going into stewardship campaign season, and everybody knows that there are these cuts coming, right? It's a hard time to ask people to give money when something that they love might be scaled back or cut, or a position or hours or something like that. So keep those conversations focused on what you can do, focused on the mission. Our mission should be front and center always when we're having conversations about money in church. Otherwise, it becomes just a conversation about money and paying bills, right? So that's not why we raise money in church. We raise it so that we can do mission. Every dollar is tied to mission in the church. And we need to remind people of that relationship. So the work of the church will continue. If we can't have a full-time youth position, youth director, like we did last year, we're going to have to roll up our sleeves. We're going to have to find a way to keep that work going, because kids are still kids and they still need to be taught and formed, and we still need to help them grow into great Christians. So if we can't pay someone to do that, we need to do that work, or we need to raise the money to do what we can. So maybe we'll have fewer resources to spend on mission, but we'll have to find other ways to do that work. And that's where, when we ask people to make a gift of treasure, we also ask them to make commitments of time and talent, so that, how can you help us with the work that we're doing this year? I think it's really important. Also, every vestry, every clergy member has one or two people, maybe more if you're in a congregation of a certain size, that family, that household, that individual that can make a really big gift if called on. Maybe you're saving them for, the roof is going to need to be repaired in a couple of years, or there's a really big capital campaign coming up, or of something else, and you're going to ask them to make a lead gift. We all have those people in our congregation, and that varies. Lead gift can be whatever you determine it to be, $5,000 or $50,000, depends on your scale and your scope. But whatever it is, this might be the year to ask them to make the gift, to cover some operational deficits, to do some of that work. Why save them for a rainy day when it's raining right now? So sometimes it's good, if we've been saving that ask, to make that ask and to have that work accomplished. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about what to do when the world looks scary and we don't know, we're going into stewardship season and people are confused about what's coming next. We've been there before. In fact, from the first century on, we've been raised and been a part of societies in flux, persecutions, pandemics. We've been through all of this before, and so our times are often uncertain. What remains is our steadfast hope. We plan for the future in the ways that we can, and that's how we survive. We survive because we are scrappy people of faith. We know how to get things done, and we don't lose our faith when the time gets tough. Sometimes it's really important to have those messages in your pocket to pull out when people are saying, I'm really worried about the election, the economy, what the big industry in my town is going to do. Those things really matter to people. And so when you can remind them, it's not a platitude that we're just people of hope and buck up, it's going to be fine. It's a theological statement. We're going to be fine. All will be well. And we need to remember that. We rely on each other to make that happen. We also need to remember that, you don't sign your life away when you make a pledge. You don't sign it in blood or anything. You can change your pledge. So sometimes I encounter folks who say, I really want to make a gift and I'm going to make it at this level, but if I need to change it, I'm really worried. Maybe I shouldn't make this gift. And I think you should. And it's just a conversation with the treasurer if you need to make a change. No big deal. No one's going to look at you funny. No one's going to deny you to communion next week. If you need to change your gift, it's really okay. And we will work with you and we'll work on that together. A lot of times people say, I just can't do it right now. I'll make it up next year or whatever. And maybe they will, maybe they won't, but give them the grace to be able to make their own plan. Let's remind people that cash isn't the only way we accept money in church or gifts in church, right? So you might be sitting on appreciated stock. I know last year the market was a little weird, but you might still have some stock that is outperforming, and you don't get taxed on it when you give it to the church as part of your contribution. That's really good. That's good for you. That's good for the church. So securities are a great way to give money. Reminding folks that they can give from their required minimum distribution in their retirement accounts, or directly as a qualified charitable distribution from their retirement account. They can make gifts to the church that way. So there are lots of ways, some of them really tax incentivized, for people to make good gifts to the church. So remind them when times are tough and they're worried about it, that there are other ways that they can complete their pledge to the church. The most important thing to remember is that every gift matters, no matter its size, no matter its impact. It all matters to God. It all matters to the church. We believe the story of the widow's mite. It's a beautiful story because it's so true. When people give of themselves in whatever meaningful way that is, it is a gift that just says and speaks to the love that they have and the love that's been shared with them. I want now to switch gears and talk a little bit about forming ourselves, and then some formation exercises we can use with the congregation to help form them theologically. TENS has what we call the Money Autobiography. You can download it from our resource library. The Money Autobiography is a great thing to do in a small group that's about to become a little vulnerable with each other, because some of the questions are pretty intense. You can skip the questions that are too hard, or modify it in any way, but it's really good because it helps us get to our own stuff about money. We all have it. So the Money Autobiography kind of helps us understand how we approach things. When you look at your own relationship with money, what do you see looking back at you when you look at your budget? What does it say about how you make choices on buying and saving and investing and spending? Where are your priorities? If we say things like the budget is a vision document, it's a mission document, those things are true. So is your personal budget, your household budget, right? And so that also is a place where we communicate our values. And so when we look at our budget, where's our money going? And how are we spending it, and how are we saving it? Those are also questions that are theological and are a part of our discernment. So doing an exercise like this in our stewardship small groups as we're forming our teams can sometimes be a really beautiful, wonderful way, maybe on a retreat to get started, or in your first meeting to do some work on this. It helps us break down some of our barriers. Money is a shared tool. It's a common concept. We all are locked into it with our system, with our government, with our economy, with our finances, with our lives. So it's a common story. It's such a common story that Jesus spent 40% of his ministry, 16 of the 40 parables, he spent talking about money. Money, possessions, stuff, and our attachments to them are the subject or the object or the metaphor of 16 of the 40 parables. Sorry. So think about that. If Jesus spent that much time talking about money, why? Because in the first century or the 21st century, it's really important. It's work that we need to do. It's work that can get in the way. It's also work that can really lift us up. And so for those folks who say, you're always talking about money in church, you shouldn't do that, I remind them that if 40% of the sermons were about money, they would really be unhappy. So we follow Jesus in this. It's okay to talk about money in church. What do our opinions and experiences about money tell us? And really, how do we analyze that? How do we feel about people who are different from us, who have different values or experiences about money? I have a good friend who lives on a really lovely trust fund, and his view of money is really different from mine. And so sometimes he tells me these stories and I'm like, what world do you live in? And I'm like, I remember, you live in the world where this money is inexhaustible and it comes into your bank account freely. Good. So he's shaped by a series. I have some feelings about that, and my difference, what do I do with that? So when we encounter people who are of a different way than we are, a different mindset, how do we respond to that? This is all tied up with our own Christianity, our own love of each other, our own celebration of our diversity. Money is another way in which we are diverse in our society. How much of it we have and how we use it and where it's come from. These are really important things that we kind of want to break down sometimes. Here's another formation exercise that I really like, and it takes the baptismal covenant that we know and love, and it fills in some stewardship or some formation ideas about our relationship with money into it. So I like to do this as an exercise where we read through the baptismal covenant, and then we say for each of those promises, what does this say about us, or what exercise could we do that helps tie in our stewardship? In the TENS resource library, you'll find a stewardship Bible study. We have about 30 passages from the Hebrew and Christian scriptures that speak specifically to themes of stewardship. You can do a Bible study on that when you're thinking about that first promise about continuing in the apostles' teaching. When we think about how we resist evil, when we think about our financial decisions and how they impact the world, and we know this, we're reminded of it, when we invest in things, where are those investments going? What is it supporting? Do we believe in those things? When we're buying something, where was it made and what was it made of? And what will we do with it when it's no longer ours? Those are all parts of the ways that we live and work in a system of good and evil in the world. And, that the confession that we have in the Enriching Our Worship series that talks about the evil we do and the evil done on our behalf, this is a part of it. Participating in destructive economic systems, as sometimes we have to, is a part of it. So why am I saying this? Part of understanding our commitment to money, part of understanding our commitment to gratitude and generosity is understanding how to talk about it in church in open and honest ways. And so this is another formation exercise you can use. Sharing the good news. What is the mission? What's the impact of your gifts? I like to always say, it's great if you have a food program. It's even better if you say, how many people are fed each week by our food program? How many kids are taught in our tutoring center? How many jackets did we distribute last year to people without homes? How do we quantify and show the impact of our good news? How do we serve our neighbors? How do we seek them? How do we find them? Where do our gifts go? And remember that absolutely every gift matters, no matter how it's come into the church. This is about respecting our dignity. There are lots of other tools in our resource library about books, book studies, other kinds of tools you can use in formation, both for your committee, and then maybe challenge yourselves to lead something in the church. Do a Sunday afternoon rector's forum, or a Wednesday night group, or a Zoom group, or whatever you'd like to do on some of those themes. We have lots of resources for educating and creating formation. They're all free to you. So let's switch gears into my last section, and that's about setting goals for your campaign. I like to set the goal for the campaign early. I like to do that based on what we learned from last year's campaign. So that's the first thing we should do. We should take a look at what happened last year, and take a look at, every congregation differs in what access to financial information committee members have. So based on your values, if you're looking at trends, or if you're looking at actual numbers, if you're looking at ranges, be able to know that. Have your finance team prepare the report that's right for you, so you can see, how did we do, and where are we going up and where are we going down? If you're going up in small gifts but down in large gifts, that tells you some information about the health of your congregation or where people are at with their money. You can make a lot in small gifts. You just need a lot of them to account for some of those large gifts. So as you think about the health of your campaign, know where your campaigns are coming in. Set that budget that's based on real numbers. The worst thing, I think, is for a finance committee or for a vestry to say, here's the gap, and this is what we need stewardship to do next year. I think that's just the wrong way to set a stewardship goal, because it's arbitrary. It doesn't take into account what happened in stewardship last year. If they say, well, we made this much money, so add 10%, that's our goal this year. Why did you add 10% and not 15 if the year was a good one, or not 7 if everyone is looking like they're panicked? Why grow it all sometimes if you're in a year that's really awful? So it's really hard for, I think, a stewardship committee to respond to a goal that's given to them without any input, without any analysis. So do some analysis. If you can be a part of that, that's even better. Also, have some other things in your goals besides money, because again, stewardship is about time and talent as well. So do you have goals for how many new households we need to find this year or invite in, or what we're going to do with them once we get them in the door? Do you have goals for volunteers? We need more people to do this ministry because it needs to grow and it needs more staffing and it needs more help. Is there a new ministry that you want to start up? So we're going to need a whole bunch of people who are really excited about this to get going. Those are things that your canvassers, your committee members can be talking about when they're talking about asking people to join them. And hey, did you know this committee is really starting up, or this ministry is going, and would you like more information about it? Would you like more information is like the second question that every stewardship person should be asking after will you join me, right? Because I'm here to answer your questions about our church, right? So ask me, and if I don't know, I'll ask someone or put you in touch with the people who do know. I want you to make fully informed decisions and really get excited about the church this year. Your goals should be achievable. That's always nice in a goal. Aspirational, so that they're inspiring, but you have to meet them. Otherwise, a goal that isn't met just feels terrible. Feels terrible to the people who put so much time and effort into running a campaign. And so I don't look at the committee and say, you failed. I say, we failed. We picked a bad goal. We didn't do enough about it. Something went wrong somewhere, and it's not just the committee members, it's everyone. So, but it will feel to the committee like it's their fault and their problem if the goal isn't met. So have goals that you can meet. That's really important. If you have other things, like maybe it's time for us to refresh our website, or we want to start thinking about a capital campaign and planting some seeds, your committee can help you with that too. Next year we're thinking about redoing the parish hall. We're going to be joining or gathering a group of people to solicit ideas. Are you interested in being on that committee or whatever, right? So you can plan for the future and think about future activities. I like to put a few of these kinds of things in my plan as well, that maybe I'm going to check in with some of the people who make the largest gifts in the church and some of the people who make the smallest. And there's no judgment about those, but it's really to find out, like, what's your story? Why do you give what you do? And what does it mean to you? And why high and low? Because there will be interesting stories to tell there. I really want to hear what your passion is. Maybe ask Cynthia to come out to your congregation and preach a sermon on stewardship, or lead a workshop, invite TENS in to do a workshop, consult with us or other folks from your neighborhood who are stewardship experts. Sometimes even the rector next in the church in the town over coming and talking to you all about stewardship. It's a new voice and a new message and a new person saying the same words, but it hits people differently. it's really important to get some new voices in about stewardship every year. So think about that. Maybe do a book study. I like to think about Henry Nouwen's book, The Spirituality of Fundraising. It's about 25 pages long. You can read it in 15 minutes, and it is full of beautiful stories and wisdom about why we raise money in ministry. It's a really beautiful, and why that's a spiritual process, why it's not just a task that we do. Finally, do some metrics in your fundraising. So your newsletter, your bulletin, great places to do a snapshot of our budget and where we're at, our pledges and where we're at. You don't have to say anything about them. The numbers can speak for themselves, but give people a sense that there's a transparency in the numbers. We promised that we were going to do this at the beginning of the year, and here's where we're at right now. That's really helpful, along with some kind of pledge statement. I know it's hard, especially in small congregations, for the treasurer to get those out more than once a year. So if you only do a mid-year pledge statement, that's great. If you can get them out quarterly or more often, even better. Technology is starting to make this easier. The more online gifts that come in, the way easier those reports are to generate. But at least one round of statements a year to help people know that they're on track or that they're behind or whatever is really helpful. I want to end by inviting you to think about using the TENS materials this year. Rooted in Abundance is really about how we find our hospitality, how we find the welcome, how we respond to God's generosity in creation, and how we have gratitude about that. We are filled with examples of abundance, and when we are planted in it, we find that we grow really deep roots that can sustain our congregations. Our stewardship campaigns should be those roots that in the lean times, they dig deep and they have that fresh water, those fresh nutrients that keep our congregation going. And in the fat years, they store up reserves so that we can create our dream, that we can have flourishing, loving communities. So think about using that this year. It's open to you and ready to be downloaded. It's on our website, and you can access it. That's everything I wanted to say to you in my presentation. We've got about 16 minutes left for you to ask your questions about how you might go about challenges you've had in recruiting a team, questions you might have, and whatever it is. I'm here to talk.
Go ahead, folks.
Don't be shy.
One of the things I want to add to what you said, Davey, is that it's really important to thank people a lot. And one of the hooking on to one of your last points about the reports and financial, reports to pledging units quarterly or so is a great way of thanking people for supporting the ministry. You just can't thank people enough.
Yep. I think it's really lovely that the last job the stewardship committee has before the books close is helping write those thank you notes. And they can be emails. I'm not saying everybody should be handwriting messages, although they're lovely when we do. But communicating, thank you for participating. Thanks for making your gift. And that's really helpful. We should thank people often, and remember all throughout the year that we're spending that money that was raised. And so, in the middle of the year, reminding people we're really grateful for what you give to us, and it helps it. It also reminds us that that we need to keep the gifts coming.
One thing I noticed, or I really sort of chimed with me, Davey, was when you're talking about goals. I think being sort of opening our minds to some of the goals, like a goal is not necessarily let's do at least what we did last year, right? I mean, that, which I think sometimes is how we think about these things. But I noticed you had, 5 new pledging members, that kind of have, a couple of goals in there. So certainly there's going to be an overall financial goal. Or you might have a specific one that is, an overall financial goal that includes being able to fund a ministry that, at a certain level. But to have some of those specifics, like 5 new people, or getting our message out in new ways, I think that's I think that can be really helpful for us, kind of expand our thinking.
It's other ways to have success too, right? And we can celebrate that at the end of the campaign. Like, look at the messaging we did and look at what we brought in. Great.
I see Scott Bennett. I'm going to pick on somebody. Scott, this is, if you guys aren't going to ask your questions, I'll pick on you, just like your 3rd grade teacher did. So Scott, what are you thinking? I know that you're really working on stewardship this year, and I think you might have thought that that the timing of getting a team more than you and Jim together was challenging. What do you think about some of these ideas for sort of recruiting stewardship folks?
Well, I want to say that it's broadened my view. My view was to put together a team basically by picking out other vestry members. And what I've come away from, David, I want to thank you for this. That's absolutely the wrong thing to do. That maybe Jim, our rector, and I, but I probably plan to announce the vestry, they're all off the hook, but now you got to help me find other people. And I've started thinking about who some of those other people may be. So that's the first takeaway. There's a huge amount here. I haven't processed it all. Many of the ideas were ones that I already had. I have a very strong feeling we have to focus on mission and not money. I mean, it's everybody understands we need the money, but I think it's important for us to just as you said, focus on the mission, and then the money sort of comes after that. I mean, but if and I've said this for years, if the only thing we're doing is just collecting money, we're like any other club, and I don't think the church is a club.
Yeah,
I'm not actually a club joiner, but I'm very much a church person. And so I think it's important. So we have to start with mission. In fact, just today I was talking to our parish administrator, and Jim beat me to it, but we've changed our pledge sheet around. So the money is actually the bottom part. So it's actually time, talent, and treasure. Instead of past was always money and then the other things. And I think that's important. There's a lot of other things. I mean, I've been taking notes. I plan to sit through the video again. And as I said, we need to start working now because I think we're late. I think the goal of having a stewardship team together by Easter is actually a wonderful goal. And maybe we'll try that for next year because we're way past Easter. But
there's always next year.
Thank you very much, Davey. I really appreciate this.
Thank you. And you said a couple really important things there. Let's not ask the vestry, one member maybe, but not everyone. They have other jobs to do. I worked with a rector once who said, I force all of my first year vestry members to serve on a stewardship committee. I'm like, nothing in that sounded good.
Welcome to the vestry.
Like, is it some punishment? Is it some hazing ritual? Like, what's going on there? Why do that? They could be terrible people for the stewardship committee, and they've been pushed into it. So it should be a choice and a joy to serve on stewardship. Really, if you create a nice team, you're gonna have some good time together. You'll have a potluck. You'll develop a committee that loves each other. It'll be a really joy-filled ministry. And ministry is the focus there, right? You know,
Correct.
I read in my diocese, people send me their stewardship letter before they send it out. Will you red pen this for me? And every year there is somebody who says, we need to keep the lights on. We pay for the office supply. I'm like, your pledges, they do all that. Yes, we should celebrate paper clips, but that is not why we raise money. We raise money for mission and the people that are helped in the world that has changed, and for getting the good news out to as many people as we can. That's why we raise money. What are some other experiences that in the way you've run stewardship campaigns, what challenges have you run into, either in recruiting people, retaining people, forming them?
We've, I think, always been challenged with getting a group together to form the stewardship team. And the past couple of years, one of the wardens was the kind of de facto chair of the stewardship committee. And there were maybe 4 or 5 people, a couple from the vestry, and then a few others that we were able to kind of drag in by their hair to be on it. But I just think people still think of stewardship as fundraising, and they don't like asking for money for any reason. So it's getting over that hump of tying it into, again, the focus being on the mission, and being able to talk about that more joyfully and freely, that, you know, we'll be able to attract other folks to come to be a part of the stewardship team. You're on
I
mute.
was on mute. 3 years of using Zoom and I was on mute. Wouldn't it be great if your stewardship committee were the team to be on? Forget the garden club, forget the, spring fling. No, people want to serve on stewardship because it's great.
Right.
Are you in a congregation that, or maybe I should just ask, what are some of the models that you use for your stewardship campaigns? Do you do every member canvases? Do you do small group meetings? Do you write a letter? Do you do testimonials? What are some of the different tools or models that you use in your churches?
We basically do the letter writing. Scott again. Don't be misled. Winfield is actually my first name, but I keep it secret. We write a letter, and I think that can be a part of a campaign, but I think it needs to be, we need to add some more personal stuff. I don't know about every member canvas. I grew up with every member canvas and hearing about it. My father was a priest, and I'm still not sure I totally do that, but there's other things clearly we can look at to do that makes it far more personal.
You can do things personally without having to do an every member canvas.
Right, absolutely.
I mean, they're labor intensive. They're beautiful campaigns, but they're labor intensive. Small
This is
group is
Vicky.
another. Oh, go on.
Oh, sorry. This is
Yep.
Vicky McGrath. Like Scott, we primarily do letter writing, but at the same time, every year we have a completely different brochure that is usually it's usually like either 4 big pages or 8 well, maybe it's 8 pages, but it's lots of photographs and some charts and other things, lots of white space on the page, kind of a way of telling the story. And in the past, we would usually have at least 2 people give stewardship testimonials. During COVID, during the first COVID year, we did do, we put together, we were going to do a video, and what we ended up doing was, rather than one long video, we did some video interviews with people about what they really liked, what they supported, their ministries, and we put them on the website, and we also sent out the links to them to everybody. And then we had someone in the parish at that time who was an actress, and I forget what the theme was. It was about seeing Christ in a new way, because of the pandemic. So she did a little, she wrote a little skit about that, and we filmed it. She acted it out, and how we were, to go along with how we were seeing Christ in our ministries and in our lives in new ways. So so we did that one year. But now that I'm saying that, I'm thinking, wow, those video interviews would be a great thing to do again, I think. So
Yeah, video interviews are nice. They're easy too. People can film them on their own time,
on their phones.
on their phones, right? We all have a video device now.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hi, Ross.
Yes, thank you. I have so grown in my commitment to stewardship and in my faith, and it's changed the way I've done a lot of things. We've had an opportunity lately. My husband and I believe in education, and we were able to make a donation to a college for a scholarship, and of course we got the thank yous, and they were wonderful. But we got invited to the graduation, and we got introduced to the students, and they talked to us about what they were going to do. And our contribution was small, but it was a part of where they were going and what they were going to do. And my husband and I walked away from that event thinking, we need to do more of this.
Right.
It was, the thank you notes were wonderful. They were heartfelt, they were very meaningful. But being there to really witness what the contribution meant, to see the ministry in action, and it's kind of transformed the way I see things that we could do on our own.
Yeah, I really love that. When we hear from the people who benefit or are impacted by our work and our gifts, we get so much joy and gratitude from that, from their gratitude, right? Gratitude is infectious. It's not always appropriate in church, but I find that when people maybe have a video interview of someone who gets food from the food pantry and they talk about what it means for their family, right? Play that, because that's tying right back to, I made this gift, this mission happened because of it, and this family is better off or receiving something from it. In my church, we always do those minutes for mission during stewardship season. And often they are people standing up talking about why I came to the church and why I love it and why I support it with my gifts. And those are great. And the ones that are most heartfelt are, you prayed for me when I needed it and brought me through the hardest place in my life. Or, I received this gift from the church for something that I really needed. And that was all possible because of you. And that's now why I give back to the church, right? Those stories of impact from people who have received the love and ministry from our church is really important. So when you can include those and make it, if it needs to be anonymous, if it needs to find a way to preserve boundaries, do that. But it's really important. You know, my grandfather used a life insurance policy to send a scholarship to his alma mater. And every year my father gets a thank you note from whoever got that scholarship. And they are the most touching letters. Like you say, it's about people talking about what they're going to go do, and how they're going to do it. And it's this touch point. I know that some alumni relations officer is standing over them, making them write that letter. But at the same time, I'm like, when we read that in our family, it feels really good.
But I think that's also, I think there's a really important sort of future thing about that. You know, when we talk about a thank you, it's kind of closing the loop, like you made a gift and thank you for making the gift. But when included in that is, this is what I'm going to do, you know, because you made this gift to this ministry or this scholarship, I am going to be able to do these things. That sort of pulls the person into the future. And, you know, I think that's an important way for us to be thinking about this too.
Yeah.
But the thing that just profoundly moved me is how greatly I was leveraged by the event. Is it absolutely magnified my desire to do more, to be more invested. I had no idea the power that witnessing to the effect would have on the giver. You know, it was like opening a dam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep, it really is. Well, so that's the lesson that you've given all of us in our congregations. If we can find the way to tell those authentic stories about how our gifts made a difference in people's lives, we will have those transformative experiences in our members when they make their gifts, right? Because they'll see and feel the direct impact that their gifts have on real humans, on real people. I love that. Thank you for bringing that into this space tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I am mindful that it's 8:30 for y'all. It's just 5:30 here for me. But I want to really thank you for being a part of this. This was a great conversation made better by your questions. I know we had a lot of content to get through tonight, so I really appreciate you bearing with me. I'll send you all these slides so you can remember all the many words I said, but I really appreciate your attention and your questions. Sign up for next Thursday, Breaking Through the Pledge Plateau. So how do we get people who give last year's gift to give more and think about more? And how do we apply some strategies from our nonprofit siblings to donor management and thinking about how to help people increase, how to give them more information about our mission?
So we'll see all of you next week and more. So it'll be awesome.
Absolutely. All right.
Thank
friends.
you.
Thank you.
Good
Dave.
Good night.
night.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Thank you all.